In today's challenge I'm going to be making a full ambient track using sounds generated with PaulXStretch only. For those of you who are not familiar with PaulXStretch, it's not a soft synth, it's actually an effects plugin that generates sounds from the audio that you put into it. So what it does to the sound is difficult to explain. It's definitely not a normal sample player. It uses time stretching to change the sound, but not in a way that is intended to keep the character of the sound. So basically you put sounds in and you end up with something completely different. And this is not intended to be a tutorial video, but I think you might learn some interesting things anyway. So let's get started. I have an Ableton Live set opened up here and I've created 8 audio tracks. 4 of which have the plugin on it and the 4 other ones are going to be used for resampling. So I'm only going to use sounds generated with this plugin and I'm just going to throw in some random samples into the plugin and see what happens. I'll use the audio tracks next to them to resample the sounds. If I need more sounds, I can always create more tracks, of course. Let's just get into it. Let's go to the sample library and find some sounds to put into here. Now, first off, I found that PaulXStretch doesn't accept AIF files, only WAV files. So let's find some WAV files, just anything, and start playing around with this and see what kind of sounds we can get. So at the top here is a play button. And the first parameter I'm going to adjust is this stretch amount. That basically slows down time and stretches the sound out for a longer amount of time. This FFT size has something to do with the sampling of the sound. It changes the character in some sort of way. I'll just go back to the default for now. So we're getting some noise here, which is nice but not really special. Now there's some things we can do to the sound. We can shift the frequencies, for instance. That doesn't appear to do a lot, probably because this is a noise sample. Let's turn that off for now. The pitch, we can shift that. This is regular pitch shifting, so if I do 12, that's actually a full octave. And you can hear the tuning of the sound changing slightly. Now there's this interesting binaural beat control and that creates sort of a panning effect. You can increase or decrease the amount here and you can also change the frequency of the panning, the left-right shifting. Another one down here is the ratio control and this adds harmonics to the sound based on the bass frequency. So raising the sliders here changes the character of the sound. This will add some low frequencies, for instance. And now I'm hearing something that I'd like to use. So this low frequency coming in here. Let's see if we can modulate that. I'll add in an LFO here. And let's see if I can assign this slider to the LFO. I guess that's possible. And now you see it moving. I'll change the frequency, make it very slow. Something like this, 0.13 Hertz. And what I'll do now, I'll just resample this. I record this onto the next track. And I'll do that in the arrangement view and get a nice long sample going here. By the way, the tempo is the standard 120 BPM tempo in live. Let's see if I still want to use that when I've collected some more sounds. This is not going to be a very rhythmic track, it's going to be more an ambient style track. Because of the nature of PaulXStretch, it doesn't really generate percussive sounds, it's more about drawn out bad-like sounds. I think this is enough, 16 bars. Let's stop it here and I'll just mute this and make a loop, a 16 bar loop. Right, on to the next track. I have another instance of PaulXStretch loaded up here and let's find another sample. Maybe something less noisy and hissy, but a little more diverse in the sound. I can of course try several ones until I find something that I like and play with the controls to see how I can shape this. Again, I'll increase the stretch amount. Let's see what the original sample sounds like. It's again a bit of a noisy thing. I'll try something more melodic, more pitched.
A good thing.
A vocal sample, why not? By the way, you can adjust the parts of the sample that are playing here with the length, the sound start and the sound end controls here, and you can see the part of the sample that's selected. Now one thing I found is that this playhead on the screen here isn't really reliable, and the button here that looks like it's a reset button, return to start, doesn't really appear to do that. It does so on the screen, but I don't think it works reliably on the sound. But anyway, this is all about just seeing what we get. So let's try some few more controls. There's frequency spread. Oftentimes what you'll find is changing these parameters doesn't change the sound immediately. It'll sometimes take a little bit of time before the effect happens. And you can hear how this really mangles the sound, changes the character, destroys it almost. Another interesting one is this tonal versus noise control here. All these sections can be turned on and off with the on and off button. So when they're off they have no effect. But now that it's on, let's see what we can do to shape the sound with this. This adjusts the balance between the tonal part of the sound and the noise. More to the left is more noisy, and more to the right is more just the tonal part. Pretty cool. Let's put a reverb on this. I'm moving the playhead by clicking here, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the sound. Let's just resample this and see if I can get something usable here. Right, so let's try another sample with this, because I'm not really convinced that I want to use this sound. I'll just go into the list of samples here again and just pick something random. Let's try this piano. Now we're talking. Scary stuff. Pretty cool. There's also this number of harmonics section. This really changes the sound a lot. You can change the number of harmonics here that the sound is made up of, and you can change the frequency base for some interesting effects as well here. Now it sounds like a flute. Now sometimes the sound will become very low in volume, and for that there's this very handy compress control here that I'll activate. I'll just slide this all the way to the right to make it louder. I like this better actually without the harmonics stuff going on. So let's record this. I'll create another audio track to do this. Resample track 3. This is just droning on, so I'll stop recording here. And as a quick aside, let's see how this goes together, these tracks. I'm fearing the worst actually. Well, maybe not too bad. Let's move on to the next one. Another track with PaulXStretch loaded up on it, and I'll find another sample here. So I'm just playing around with the controls a little bit, trying stuff, maybe the ratios. That's pretty cool. Very ominous. Yeah, what I'll do with this is I will loop this so we don't get any quiet parts here. So set the sound start here and the end, something like here. So I'm making sure that it just keeps looping this part and the sound doesn't fizzle out. And then I will start playing basically the ratio mixer while I'm resampling the sound to record some movement here. So I'm soloing track 6 and then pressing play, otherwise there's no sounds. So we get this nice evolving texture here by adding the harmonics, the ratios, gradually fading them in And of course I can fade them out as well. What I'll do is I'll record another part with less of the ratios engaged here. I'll just start with the basic sound and then add in the low frequencies. I thought that was a very cool dramatic effect. Let me just move this over here and start from the beginning of the timeline. Okay, let's go. Another recording here. Right, and on to the final track where I have PaulXStretch loaded up here. And let's see if we can make something that is sort of more percussive. I might have to do some resampling. Let's just start again with finding a WAV file to put in here. Anything will do. It's a bit of a roll of the dice, but that's actually the fun of this. Da Funk Sprung. No idea what that is. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. Cool, but let's try something else. Tempo drones. Let's do some mangling here. Tonal versus noise. Let's see what we get when we do this. Go for the more noisy part of the sound. It sounds a bit muffled and muted, this sound. Let's see what the frequency spread control does here. Yeah, that makes it more atonal. Now actually there's also a filter control here, a low pass and a high pass. And there's also a special filter, a free filter where you can draw filter curves. I'm not going to use that for now. Let's use the compressor though to pump up the volume a little bit, or quite a bit. And let's see what we can do with our harmonics. There's this Gaussian harmonics option. I have no idea what it does, but it does change the sound. So just playing around with this, see what we get. This is actually kind of cool. Let's resample this one. Don't think I need a very long loop of this because it's kind of static. Let's just leave it here. And I'll try a different sample. Some cool stuff again here. Ooh, nice low end. This is an interesting texture. I'm going to resample this and load it up into a sampler or simpler device and see if I can make it a playable sound. It's changing as we speak though, because it's cycling through the sample. The character changes. This, I like this. And I'll go with one more new sample and just generate some textures and see what I can do with them. This could be interesting. Let's just turn off most of these things. Well, I'll do the stretch amount, of course. And the FFT size. This actually plays some sort of a sequence, so that's useful. I'm just going to record it. So as it's moving through the different parts of the sample where there's sound, it does it at a lower rate, but you still get these separate sounds. So that's usable. Okay, so I've recorded a bunch of sounds and now I'm going to try and shape these into an actual piece of music. Right, so I've done a bunch of arranging and editing of the sounds and I turned this into a more or less complete ambient track. So now let's do a playthrough of the track and I will explain what I did in the arrangement, how I changed some of the sounds, what effects I applied, etc. to give you an idea of how I did this using the sounds that I got from PaulXStretch. So the track opens with these two drones. This one has a low pass filter on it that gradually opens. This one is actually where I loaded the sound up in a sampler device as to be able to loop it, to get smooth transitions between the MIDI clips here and get a nice constant drone going. To do this I took a long attack time and a long release time. Now we hear this third sound coming in. There's some volume automation on here. which I'll show you. I tend to do those on the utility plugin. It's easier, more convenient than doing it on the mixer volume. And again, another one. These are all from the same PaulXStretch recording, basically, just spread out across the arrangement. And then the third one here at a different pitch, also with a different character, all coming from the same sample from PaulXStretch. Now 2 new elements are introduced. This drone here that is being faded in, it has an auto pan to give it some movement, and then these bass notes. Now I gave this track a different color because it was also yellow like this one, or a lighter yellow, but I don't like them being almost the same color. But the main thing I did here is I took the sound, I think it was from a vocal sample that recorded through PaulXStretch, and I pitched it down maximum 4 octaves and then rendered it in place. So basically to make it this bass note, and as you can see now it's not pitched down anymore, and this takes care of the sub frequencies. In the meantime, this drone is starting to fade in, and so we get this developing thing going on, this elements coming in, going out. Again here with the volume automation on the utility plugin. And then these parts here, these rather quickly progressive notes, different volumes, different pitches, still all from this same recording of a sample going through PaulXStretch. And again, what I did here as well is I did some automation of the balance, of the padding, just to give it some movement. And now finally these 3 here, these little blocks, they are basically identical to the start. I actually messed up the timing here. I meant to put them somewhere else. I still do that. And by the way, I am in the mode here where it should copy over all the automation, or take the automation with it basically. And that's correct. Here the gain automation is moved with the clips. The track is coming to an end now. And I decided to do a fade out here on the master volume. So all these 3 elements here, the bass note and these 2 drones, they're just gonna sort of peter out slowly until it becomes completely quiet. So this was my challenge, to make a track with sounds that were all generated with PaulXStretch from samples, but the samples were transformed in such a way that it sort of counts in my book as same as using a synthesizer to generate sounds from scratch. In any case, it was a lot of fun. I don't do these kinds of tracks very often, these sort of ambient pieces, but I always enjoy them. And the results are sometimes surprisingly good in my own humble opinion. I guess in contrast to techno tracks, I don't feel a lot of pressure to make something cool or awesome or something like that. It doesn't have to be ready for the dance floor. It doesn't have to be comparable to other tracks that a DJ might want to play. So I guess that's the advantage here of making this kind of music. It's just a nice exercise. It's just a nice thing to do. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got some value from this. If you did, please like and subscribe this video. That really helps. And thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.